Well, look, TfL is arguably one of the safest and cleanest transport authorities in the world. We're using world-class enhanced cleaning. We're using hospital-quality disinfectant. We've got more than 1,000 hand sanitizers. We're using UV light to make sure our escalators are safe. We're also asking Imperial College to come and make sure there's no COVID on public transport. They found no evidence of COVID in all the testing they've done. But I think after Monday, we should continue making it compulsory to wear a face mask on public transport, where often you can't keep your social distance. It adds an additional layer of protection, but also reassurance. The evidence we know from the government's own scientific advisors, the evidence from the World Health Organization, is you wearing a face mask makes it less likely that the virus can be passed on. It reduces transmission in an indoor space where you can't keep your distance. But also the Centre for Disease Control in the USA have now said, actually, on top of it being the most unselfish thing you can do, wearing a face mask may reduce the chances of you catching the virus. So for me, it's really important that we make sure public transport continues to be both safe but also reassuring.
How confident are you, though, that Londoners will heed the TfL guidance? I mean, the plural of anecdote is not evidence, of course, but my travels on public transport last week would certainly suggest that already, in the aftermath of the announcement about July the 19th, there are a lot of people choosing not to wear masks.
Yeah, that's why I was keen to come out today before Monday and make it clear what the expectations are going to be after Monday, which is a continuation of it being obligatory to wear a face mask when you're using transport in London. The good news is, from survey work we've done over the last year, roughly speaking, 86% of people using public transport in London are wearing face coverings, and of the 14% who aren't, about 2/3 are either exempt or have a good reason. My message to anybody, not just in London, but those visiting our cities, it is going to be compulsory still from next Monday to wear a face cover. And actually, you know what, it's the most unselfish thing you can do. It means that there's less chance if you've got the virus, and by the way, 1 out of 3 people who've got the virus won't show any symptoms, it reduces the chance of you passing it on.
Is there going to be robust enforcement of this? Are we going to see bus drivers kicking people off buses, not letting them on in the first place, TfL employees being asked to confront people at train stations? Or is this simply just a statement of intent? If the Mayor of London says, wear your masks on public transport, there is a greater likelihood that people will wear masks on public transport.
Well, I've examined over the last year what's been going on in London, and roughly speaking, there have been 212,000 conversations between TfL enforcement officers and members of the public. By and large, members of the public put on their face mask, it's in their pocket or their purse, they've forgotten, it's not quite covering their nose, or sometimes they'll go to the shop and get one before they get on a bus or a network. Actually, there's only been 4,000 fixed penalty notices issued. So what you're going to be seeing from Monday is we've got hundreds of TfL enforcement officers. They'll be there to make sure people are following the rules. But if you come to a station or you want to go on a bus and you haven't got a face covering, you may not be allowed on without a face covering unless you're exempt. If you're on one of our trains, tubes, buses, Docklands Light Railway, overground trains, TfL rail, and you're seen not to have a face mask and you've not got a good reason and you aren't exempt, you'll be asked to leave.
So can I just to dwell on this topic just for a second? I think there's around about 400 TfL enforcement officers. As you say, thousands of penalties have been issued. I think just a little bit less than 5,000. That strikes me, that's one a month over the past year for each of those enforcement officers. Are we going to see more penalty notices handed out?
I hope not, because you know what the evidence is Londoners and those visiting our city have done the right thing, and not just the huge sacrifices made over the last 16 months, but over the last 12 months, making the right choice to wear a face mask without the need for enforcement to take place. But if there is a need for greater enforcement, if there's a need for more TfL enforcement officers, we'll look into that. At the same time, we're exploring making this a bylaw. That'll mean we can use both the police service in London, but also British Transport Police. But, you know, the evidence I've seen is people doing the right thing. You know, Brits and Londoners get it, and they want to be unselfish. They want to avoid the chance, minimise the chance of them passing the virus on. But also they're well aware that amongst us there are people with clinical vulnerabilities. There are some of us whose immunity is suppressed. We don't want them to be not being able to use an essential service like public transport. And so I'm confident Londoners and those visiting our city will do the right thing.
I want to talk about what happened in and around Wembley in just a second, but perhaps we could focus on what followed the football on Sunday. And Tyrone Mings and others actually within the England setup have suggested that perhaps people, including the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, fuelled the fire in terms of the racist abuse that they received. I'm sure that in the past you may well have in private referred to the Conservatives as the nasty party. I'm just wondering whether you think they're a racist party.
Well, let me be quite clear. One of the reasons why the likes of Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling and others felt so strongly about Black Lives Matter and supported the movement was to say no to racism. And one of the reasons why the likes of Harry Maguire, Harry Kane and others supported their colleagues when it came to taking the knee was to show solidarity in their fight against racism. And I think when people boo their own team, it begs the question about some of their motives. And to not condemn booing of our players taking the knee, to not condemn that, I think, doesn't bode well. But also, you know what? Harry Kane's not a Marxist. Harry Maguire doesn't want to defund the police. These are colleagues showing solidarity to their black mates in the squad. And I'm really proud of the squad. I'm really proud of Gareth Southgate. I'm really proud of the team. And those who have been hurling racist abuse online, on the stands, or on the streets should be disgusted. And I'm sure the police will be taking action.
In terms, though, of what we saw at Wembley and indeed what we saw in the West End, Cameron McIntosh complaining about the Wyndham Theatre, requiring, essentially millions of pounds worth of repairs because of the behaviour of fans. Why do we keep hearing so many people say that they have full confidence in Cressida Dick's running of the Metropolitan Police? Well,
the responsibility for the fans in Leicester Square, in Liverpool Street, outside Wembley Stadium, in parts of London, lies with the hooligans. And it's really important that they're held to account. More than 86 arrests have already been made. 19 of our police officers were injured. And the police are going through both CCTV footage, are going through body-worn videos, are looking at the evidence, and more charges will be brought because the sort of hooliganism you saw on Sunday isn't acceptable. And it's really important they're brought to book.
But there are no questions about Cressida Dick's continuing as head of the Met?
Well, no, she's got almost a year left of her contract. She's got my full confidence. It's for the Commissioner to decide whether she wants a second term. Let's cross that bridge when it comes to it. But it's really important that we support the police in relation to catching those criminals responsible for this sort of behaviour on Sunday. As far as I'm concerned, they're not real fans. And it's really important. If anybody's got any information about any hooligans on Sunday, they let the police know because we want justice to happen.
Sadiq Khan, good to see you this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Stay safe.